All right, welcome back to the Fit 40 podcast, where we simplify exercise and nutrition for busy parents 40 plus so they can improve their health and feel amazing. I'm your host, Brian Fitzsimmons, certified personal trainer and nutrition coach for people over 40 since 2015. And today we have another awesome topic. We are going to be talking about the question, should women train differently than men? We're going to get all into it, talking about hormonal differences, what the science says, what the experts say, and what I've experienced over the years and seen to be true, and come away with some helpful information to help you make the best decision for yourself with your training going forward. Now, before we dive in, as always, if you have not already, go ahead and hit that follow or subscribe button so that way you don't miss another episode. And to be totally honest, it does help the show a lot. It really means a lot to have you subscribed and supporting. And I'll just leave it there. Thank you in advance. Now, let's get into it. Should women train differently than men? Well, yes and no. We're going to dive into the differences. The big difference really being, like, let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is the hormonal differences. Like, totally fair. Like, women are different in this regard from men. Now, when it comes to those specific hormones, the big ones being testosterone and estrogen, when we're talking about women, less testosterone, more estrogen than men, which is less favorable for muscle growth. Now, in peri and postmenopause, when you hit that area of life, the amount of estrogen starts to drop. So that ratio between estrogen and testosterone starts to change a little bit, which is why when you're normally holding body fat in the legs and the butt, and when you hit menopause, all of a sudden it shifts to the belly. That's part of that reason as to why. Now, when it comes to training, sometimes this could actually potentially feel a little bit like better for muscle growth. Like, you're able to do things because you don't have the interruptions of your cycle, like the symptoms of your cycle playing a role, like assuming we've officially hit full on post menopause and we're not in peri, in that middle ground. So when you no longer have those symptoms or anything, then it's easier to get very good, consistent training in and push the weights on a consistent basis, similar to how men can, because we don't have that time of the month really wrecking havoc and making us feel lousy or any of that going on. And because of all these differences in our hormones, one big thing that has started to come up in the recent, you could say, decade is the idea of cycle syncing, like basically training around your menstrual cycle. But the problem with that is that as much as it sounds like, oh, that's legit, like that should make sense. Like, certain phases, like the follicular phase, like when you're feeling fresh, when you're feeling good, and you're coming off of that time of the month, like, you probably should perform a little bit better. And then when you are feeling lousy, when the symptoms are hitting, when you're in the luteal phase, it's like, okay, duh, kind of makes sense. Like, probably should try less intense forms of exercise and be kind to your body and give it what it needs. And the problem with that is it's just not backed by science. They've literally tested this stuff and it doesn't really seem to make much of a difference. Okay, the best that we have is that it may show a potential benefit, not a concrete absolutely, like some people have been preaching on social media, like this is the way. No, science just does not say that. Okay, there have been meta-analyses as recently as 2023 and reviews that report no consistent evidence that menstrual phase significantly alters exercise performance or training adaptations. And then there was another 2023 physiology review that concluded that while hormones fluctuate, these differences are too subtle to reliably affect exercise outcomes. And this makes sense because a lot of times how we feel doesn't necessarily match up with how we perform in the gym. So I'm sure if you've ever been training for like a long time, I say maybe like long time being over 3 to 5 years of consistently training hard, like showing up to the gym, lifting heavier weights, doing proper strength training. If you've done that much time, on those days you don't feel that great, but you kind of still give it a go and you show up and you do your thing. You're like, wow, kind of surprised myself today. Oh, I set a personal best. Didn't really think that was going to happen. And that is a very common thing, like especially in women too. Like, I've trained mostly women, to be totally honest. And on days where they have told me, because if you've ever had a free consultation call with me or a discovery call or been a client, TMI is not really a thing. I don't care. It helps me do my job better. So when women will tell me, hey, like, it's that time of the month, like I'm just not feeling that great. And I say, okay, well, let's just see what you're capable of. Tell me when you want, like, if it's too much, just let me know and we'll go from there. And almost without fail, like, we most times end up being able to do the same, if not more weight than we were doing for the same, if not more repetitions. Because, like it says, like I just previously stated from those scientific reviews and everything, that basically when it comes to your ability to do exercise, the changes in your hormones are so subtle as far as their effect on how you're performing. It's not, yes, you are feeling crappy. Yes, you are not feeling your absolute best, but you are still able to perform. And that's the key differentiator here, is that sometimes your feelings don't line up with your performance. And I'm not saying that to, like, I guess, devalue your feelings, invalidate them. Like, they matter. They absolutely do. But are we willing to challenge the fact that they might not be driving your progress? Are we willing to challenge that, hey, maybe I can show up to the gym and say, you know what, I feel like crap, but I'm still going to perform anyway and see what my body's capable of? Because if we were to follow this advice, it'd be like, okay, so you're going to lift hard for 2 weeks and then you're going to not lift hard for 2 weeks, which over the span of a year ends up being like, okay, you're just going to take strength training off for, what would that be, 26 weeks. How do we think that's going to stack up compared to showing up on a regular basis, doing your program and getting the results that come with staying with it consistently for an extra 26 weeks? Even though that might not be your best, like, feeling, you may still be able to put in the work that's required. And guess what? There are a lot of people, a lot of women who have reported that they actually lift their best, or they set personal bests during that second phase, during their menstrual period, where they are feeling their absolute worst. Cramps are terrible. They're having everything that goes with it, but they still are able to set a new personal best, which goes against what this whole idea of cycle syncing is for. Now, that being said, like, let's say you are into things like powerlifting, for example. Like, maybe it's worth testing out, like, hey, can I hit my 1 rep max on the like during the follicular phase, more so than when I do it in the luteal phase? Like, give it a try where it's like you split up your training, where it's, I don't know, say 4 to 12 weeks, and then you go for a 1 rep max during the luteal phase, then do another 4 to 12 weeks of training, and then try it out during the follicular phase, or vice versa. Okay. And that could be a way to test your own individual response, because at the end of the day, that's really what matters the most, is your individual response to your physiology, because everybody's different. And that's really the key thing. Okay. The problem that has muddied these waters is, like, these experts jumping in and saying, this is the way, this is how you should train. Men or women aren't just little men, where it's like, yeah, there's a nugget of truth there, but that drives us down the wrong paths. Okay. The big culprit, the main culprit here, is Dr. Stacy Sims. And even she has evolved her stance as recently as this year. Okay. She said early on that she emphasized rigid train by phase, like train by your luteal and follicular phase. But more recently, she's now changing her tune a little bit and saying it's individualized programming based on readiness, recovery, energy levels, physiological feedback, rather than following the calendar strictly based on your cycle. So it almost reminds me a little bit of the people that are like the low carb crowd, where they're like, it's all insulin, it's fat loss is all insulin driven. And then it's like, no, science said that was wrong. Well, it's calories, but it's because of the insulin that drives our eating behaviors. And it's like, no, you're just ignoring the main fact that you were wrong, and you're trying to justify it in a way that still lines up where you can save face. Okay. This just does not line up. Like, you should be doing a very similar approach, if not the exact same program as males, and then adjust it based on you, your personal responsiveness and your personal results, not just because you're a woman. And that being said, cycle tracking could have some value. Like, if you are able to do it in a way where you just treat it as data and it doesn't influence your decisions until you look back on it, then yeah, it could absolutely be valuable. But it also could be like when you track sleep, and then people who track sleep looking at their stats right before bed, or they're hopping into bed saying, I gotta sleep, I gotta sleep, I gotta get the best score, I gotta get the best score, it actually makes it worse. Like your sleep gets worse because you're stressing about the metric. And then that metric becomes less valuable and even possibly harmful because you are so fixated on it. Okay. But it also is going to be unreliable for people with irregular cycles. There's plenty of women out there who don't have regular cycles due to a number of different reasons. So now you're saying, oh, we got to sync it up with this schedule that's super unreliable. Okay, good luck with that. People with poor health and habits, like let's say you for some reason have a health condition that makes it so that not only are you dealing with symptoms of the cycle, you're also dealing with symptoms of that, like autoimmune disease or chronic pain or things like that. And it's like, okay, how are we going to adjust this and make it reliable day after day, week after week on this calendar? It's like, no, you're not going to be able to do that. You got to kind of just take what the day gives you and auto regulate. And that's the key thing, is auto regulation. That's like the key to the best training ever, is auto regulating, regardless if you're male or female or whatever. Auto regulate, do what is best for you in the moment based on the data that you have from prior times doing this. Okay. Because that'll help with consistency and making sure you're still showing up, giving what you can, and doing your absolute best. Okay. And in my experience, training people, like one of the big things that gets a lot of pushback is high intensity interval training, because it's not just strength training. Like hit style workouts are getting blasted right now because they're like, oh, they're the worst thing ever. It drives up your cortisol. It's like, well, if we're avoiding cortisol spikes, then don't wake up. Just don't wake up, because that's going to spike your cortisol. Also, never ever strength train. That's going to spike your cortisol. But what happens when you don't exercise in general, because it'll raise your cortisol? So what happens if we don't exercise? Our health gets worsened, but our cortisol, no, no, no. Okay, it's not that simple of, oh, cortisol bad, cortisol good. No, don't fall into that crap, please, please. Okay. And when it comes to high intensity interval training in particular, I remember at the gym I was at, we had something called Fat Blast, and it was high intensity interval style training. And to be totally honest, like it went against a lot of protocols as far as recovery, as far as like heart rate zones, trying to keep people in a good spot. And it was more likely pushing people past the point we wanted to push them. A lot of the times, because we would tell them to dial it back and they'd still push harder, because that's the environment that's created with a lot of these classes, is I got to go harder, I got to go faster, I got to go. And you're just like, oh my God, this person's going to burn themselves out. And naturally they would. But then they would come back from their doctor and be like, my doctor was like, asked me, what the hell am I doing? And we're like, oh God. And or they, whoever it was, would be like, yeah, my numbers are incredible. Like my blood pressure is in a really good spot. Like all these things, these markers are really good. And I'm just like, damn. Okay. So it turns out the body can adapt. Oh, it turns out the body actually is resilient and can positively be impacted, even though we're not doing everything perfectly. Oh, okay. Yeah. This stuff doesn't need to be perfect to see a benefit. If you're doing like the essence of whatever it is, like strength training or cardio, you're probably going to get a lot of benefit. Um, and then another thing too, like I trained some women with powerlifting too. And like I said before, on when we were powerlifting and we were trying to set personal bests, sometimes it happened during that uh, second phase, that luteal phase, when they are not in a great spot and they're really having all those symptoms. So how do you know, or sorry, let me back up here. I'm tripping over my notes. I apologize. I want to make sure I get this in depth and sync it up in a way, pun intended, so that everything flows. But when we're talking about like powerlifting, for example, yes, they are able to set those personal bests, but also how, if you are cycle syncing and you're a power lifter or you're any competitive athlete, like let's say you're a marathoner, you're on the other end of that spectrum. Like let's say you are competing for something and it just so happens to fall on that day where you are in that week where things are not feeling the best and you're cramping and you don't feel great. How are you going to know what it feels like to push through that? How are you going to understand what is the norm? Because that stress in your head of this feels foreign can definitely impact your performance. So do you want to get some practice with that going on, or do you not? Like, what is the trade-off here? There's so many reasons not to do this and not to fall into this trap. Okay, because at the end of the day, you should just apply the exact same principles and then individualize. And I know I didn't have this in my notes, but I feel like it needs to be said. When you do look at the individual differences, like sex differences, when it comes to training, the only thing that really seems to stand out right now is the fact that women can train closer to their 1 rep max, and they can train for higher volumes without the fatigue levels that men seem to experience. So guess what, ladies, you can actually go harder than the men can and experience awesome results. So it's not this thing where it's like, oh, you got to dial it back because you're just too fragile because of your hormones. It's like, no, guess what? You have a superpower. Crank it up, go. And that is really the only thing I would probably say as far as a sex difference goes that would really change training. That would change how you would program. And that would mean probably doing like an extra set or two because you can handle that extra volume. Or it would be instead of going for 80% of your max for say 5 repetitions, I would say go like 82.5 to 85% of your max for that. But again, that would even still get individualized and you'd have to really feel it out and see with a coach where you're at with that because even those percentages get a little weird. But on average, you probably can get a little bit higher up in that regard. Um, and when it comes to the main thing here that changes training, the big things are not sex. It's number one is goals. Like, what are your goals that you're training for? Like, a marathoner is going to train a whole lot different than a power lifter. Okay. Somebody who's trying to do CrossFit is going to be a lot different than somebody who just wants to lose a little bit of weight and feel more energized throughout the day. Okay. Another thing is physical limitations. If you have a meniscus tear, you're probably not going to be doing like shuffle or shuttle runs like somebody who's getting ready for the NFL combine. Okay. If you have mental limitations, like some people just genuinely are, like they see a weight and they're like, nope, shut down, boom, can't do that heavy weight. That's totally fine. Go with a lighter weight and do more repetitions and then prove to yourself that you can do that heavier weight. So even though the program may say, okay, you got to do 80% of your max and you see that heavy weight on the bar and you're like, ooh, I can't do that. That's fine. Dial it back. Go for higher repetitions with that less weight, even though the program called for something else. Or another big one is preferences. You might just genuinely hate a certain exercise, like Bulgarian split squats, for example. If you do genuinely hate them to the point where you will not show up for training, like you are going to skip sessions because you are actively avoiding this thing, then it's doing more harm than good. Even though it might be the best exercise in the whole wide world, I hate it too, but it does have a lot of benefits. If it results in you missing, then it's now a negative part of the program. So let's get rid of that and say, okay, you know what? Instead of that, we're going to do goblet squats or we're going to do leg press. And if you're able to do that and work those same muscles and you enjoy the program, then you're more likely to show up more and be more consistent. You're going to get better results that way. So that's the stuff that really, really makes a difference at the end of the day. Not your gender. It's what are you chasing? What are you going after? And what is your body giving you that day? That's the stuff that matters the most. All right. So I will cap it off on that. But before we head out, if you haven't already, go ahead and grab the Core 4 bundle, the Metabolism and Mobility Reset. So you get the Core 4 trainings, which are podcast episodes just like this to explain it all. And you also get a follow along mobility routine that has adjustments for getting up and off the ground if you can't, knee issues, wrist issues. If you got any of that going on, it'll show you how to do it without pissing those spots off. It's also got 15 follow-along workouts that you can do from home with very minimal equipment, and it's got a PFC cheat sheet. PFC is the system that I teach clients to follow that teaches you how to put together a plate that leaves you energized and allows you to lose some inches in the process. So definitely check that out. And if you want the whole shebang, like if you're like, listen, I just need somebody to tell me what to do, that's what I do. I'm here for a personalized plan and accountability. So if you want to do it in person, if you live near Greenville, North Carolina, you can come to Fit 40 and we'll work together in person. Or if you're not local, we can do it over Zoom. Or if you don't have the time and your schedule is like super jam packed and you need a more flexible plan, that's what the online coaching is for, where we could do 20-minute workouts or even 10-minute workouts really, and work on your nutrition and accountability all at once, then that's available as well. But the best way to know is just to set up a free discovery call with me, and we could talk about it and see exactly what you need. Okay. And if for some reason you need something I can't offer, I'll refer you to somebody who does, because I've got a lot of friends in the industry I'm happy to send you to if all else fails. But you'll never know until we get that call. So if you want to, the link is down in the description of the show notes, wherever you're watching or listening. Give it a click. Let's have a chat and we'll take it from there. All right, that's it for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you next time. But until then, go kick some ass. Bye-bye.